Well, you've all heard the question, who's your daddy? Not always in a good way that comes up, but I want to ask you today, who's your king? Okay. People want a king today. They really do. When you look at what's going on and you talk to others out in the world, well, they complain about him all the time, but they want some strong leader to take care of them, to tell them what to do. And I don't want to diverge too much, but that's why most people go and get what's called a job, because it's comfortable. They tell you when to show up. They tell you what to wear when you show up. They tell you what to do when you show up. They tell you what time you can eat, what time you can go home. And even if you're sick, you got to call and get permission to stay home because you're sick. So they're just telling you what to do. The alternative is to go out and find something and create your own work. But that's a whole lot harder than just showing up and saying, hey, I'm here. I'm willing to sell myself for so much an hour. But today, we've got a strong leader. We've got a king that tells us what to do. His name is King Jesus. The problem is nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody, the vast majority of people, even the people that claim that they have a covenant with him and his Father, they don't like what he says. So they invent things so that they can ignore a lot of what he says. Let's take a look at 1 Timothy. Let's see, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 13. It says, I urge you in the sight of God, who gives life to all things, and before Christ Jesus, who witnessed the good confession before Pontius Pilate, verse 14, that you keep this commandment without spot, blameless until our Lord Jesus Christ's appearing, which he will manifest in his own time, he who is the blessed and only potentate, the King of kings and Lord of lords, who alone has immortality, dwelling in unapproachable light, whom no man has seen or can see, to whom he honor and everlasting, and see, to whom be honor and everlasting power. Amen. Blameless, without spot. Oh, that's the problem. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to eat. Don't tell me what day not to work. Don't tell me anything unless I will agree that I'm going to do it, unless I go along with it. And I think it's a good idea. All right, so what's all of this about the king? I want to take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1. I want to look at what the people said to Samuel when he was about 50 years old. All right, verse 1. It says, Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. And the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abijah, and they were judges in Beersheba. So here's Samuel. I had to figure this out. How it says he was old. So most people would picture an old man, maybe with a cane. And no, if you look at it, he was somewhere around 50 years old. That doesn't seem so old to me, but somebody that's a couple of the people there, that's like really old. That's ancient old. But anyway, verse 3, let's take a look. Now he made his sons judges over Israel. Okay, so this gives us the background. Now, let's look at the problem. Verse 3, But his sons did not walk in his ways. You got to remember, Samuel, from the time he was a child, God talked to him. Even before he could comprehend who it was. Who is it? Goes look at who's calling me. Then he figures it out. He's told, listen, be still. So God talked to him from the time that he was a child. Samuel, he grew up. He was a godly man, a servant of God. Someone that was dedicated to God from birth and was well aware of the things that the priests were supposed to do and not supposed to do. He was highly trained from the time of a child to serve God. So he's no dummy in this. Verse 3, but his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. His sons were scumbags. Okay? Religious scumbags. Now that could never happen, something like that today. There's no religious scumbags out there today. Terry, you're laughing pretty good. I think maybe you've met one or two of them. Oh, yeah? Verse 4, then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. See, it's just so much of a problem here. All the elders get together and they're gonna go in front of Samuel here and they're going to, hey, something's got to happen. Verse 5, and said to him, look, you are old and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. Now, they went from a system that God said to have, where he was the king. He had servants that were the priest, but they were supposed to teach the things that God said. They weren't doing it. In fact, with Samuel, when he appointed his sons as leaders, they were crooks. There was no more justice in God's system at this point. So what was the solution? Hey, let's get rid of this. And all these other nations all around us, they got a king. So let's get a king just like them. Because we don't like who we got over us today. Verse 6, it says, but the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed before the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So see, that tells you something here. Whenever you got a king, a man as your leader, that's rejecting God. They did this because they didn't want God to reign over them. And he tells them, Samuel's upset because it's probably, the biggest reason is because they're rejecting and rebelling against his sons. I'm sure he loved his sons, even though he knew that they weren't really so good. Now, I don't know why he just didn't take them out behind the woodshed and give them a little heat on the seat. But this is the way it came down. Verse 8, it says, according to all the works which they have done since the day I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods, and so they are doing to you also. So God knew and said, look, ever since I took them out of Egypt, they've been rebelling against me. They've been disobeying against me. And here's about roughly 400 years after he takes them out of Egypt, gives them the promised land, and they enter it. For 400 years, they didn't do it right, but at that point, they reject God. It says, we want man's system, not yours. So God knew that the people would do this, that one day they would want a king and beg for a king to rule over them. 400 years, like I said, but here comes the day. He knew this was going to happen. How do I know that? Well, I'm going to give you the verse. But first, I want to know how this was a pre-appointed thing, that God knew it was going to happen. And second, when it happened, before they ever entered the land, he set out some guidelines that if you have a king, you must follow. And the king must follow to try and protect his people from themselves. So let's take a look at Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 14. When you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, and possess it, and dwell in it, and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations. Isn't that what they just asked for? I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. You shall surely set a king over you whom the Lord your God chooses. So not who they choose, but God said, when you ask for this king, it has to be somebody that I choose. One from among your brethren you shall set as king over you. And then he gives them this restriction. You may not set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. So he forbids them from setting a foreigner over them as their leader. And then he's got some instructions for the king. Verse 16, but he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not return that way again. Verse 17, neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly multiply silver and gold for himself. We got a king right now that has gold everywhere. But anyhow, verse 18, and it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write for himself a copy of this law in a book. Here's the main thing. I've tried to encourage people to do this. I know one that did. But the instructions for the king, for the leader, was he had to take God's law and he had to make his own personal copy that he wrote in a book. And then it goes on and says, from the one before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life. Every day the king is supposed to read God's law. And it goes on and says that he may learn to fear the Lord his God and to be careful to observe all the words of this law and these statutes. So first he has to write it, and second he has to read it every single day. And the purpose of doing this is so that he learns all of God's laws and his statutes. And let me just interject that. It means more than the 10 Commandments here. It's the Torah. He's got to write his own copy of the Torah. Because if we beg for a king, God knew it was going to happen, that the king would be a godly man and have the wisdom from God, so he knew how to rule over the people. Verse 20, that his heart may not be lifted above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to his right hand or to the left. In other words, he can't deviate at all. He's got to follow every law, and this is how he has to lead. And that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his children in the midst of Israel. It says if we have a king like this, his days are going to be prolonged and our days are going to be prolonged. So let me ask you the question. What happens if you don't have a king like this? What happens if the king hasn't written his own copy of God's law? What happens if the king doesn't read it every single day? Then he doesn't even know how he's supposed to rule. His days are not going to be prolonged, and neither are his children or the people in the kingdom that he's ruling over. So let me ask you like this. In this country, in the United States, we refuse to obey our king, our real king, the legitimate one. People don't want to do what he says. Even people in the church, the bottom line is they don't, most of them, the majority of them, do not want to do everything he says. Multiple reasons, but the bottom line is people just don't do what he says to do. I can't. Physically, it won't work out. I don't have the money. I don't have the ability. I wasn't born with being able to do that. And on and on and on and blah, 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 blah. The excuses never end. Better that you try and fail than you never try. I'll tell you a quick story. It's somewhere around 1983 or 4, I think, but anyhow, it doesn't matter, maybe 5. Anyway, I met a very successful businessman. It was through our congressman. The guy's name was Les Aspen, and he called this guy up, and he was trying to help me and my partner with our business. And so we went out to this guy's business, 1984 or 5. Now, not everybody even knows what this is, but he had a polymer company then. You know, polymers are a big thing today. There's lots of money and a lot of people trying to make them and use them. And 1984 and 5, he was on the cutting edge. And remember, one of the things he told me at that time, I think he said that we were talking about how hard it was to accomplish things and being a new business and all this. And he says, until you have gone bankrupt at least 3 times, you're never going to be successful. And the guy was in his mid-70s, 70 to 75, somewhere in there at the time. He says, I've been broke more years than I've had money. But every time I go broke, I look at it and I say, boy, was I stupid. I'm never going to do that again. He says, learn from your mistakes. It's called the School of Hard Knocks. Some people think, the worst thing in the world would be to fail. You know what? The worst thing in the world is never doing nothing and never trying. That guarantees, you might not fail, but you don't even have a chance at failure. You're just going to sit there and bellyache and moan and groan, and nothing is ever going to happen. You're never going to get the things that you want. Go out there. When it comes to God, go out there and, I don't know how this is possible. I don't know how. Try it. And if you fail, look up in the heavens and say, why did you trick me? No, that's not what you say. You say, what didn't I do correctly? I obviously didn't understand. Let me let you in on something. Everybody that's got a child, when you tell your child something, you don't tell them so that you're going to say, sit back, watch this, boy, this is going to be a train wreck. No, you give them advice trying to help them. Now, sometimes the kids don't understand or they don't do what you actually said. And it's a common thing. You say, don't make the same stupid mistakes that I've made. Let me save you a whole lot of heartache and trouble. And boy, I had people telling me that, and I thought, you're just stupid. You're old. You're whatever. But You don't tell them that they're to do something that you know it's going to hurt them. He's our Father. He loves us. When He tells us to do something, we should do it. Now, if we don't do it the way He said, and we don't do it how He said, or we screw it up, or whatever, yeah, we can fail, but at least we were trying. When you fail, if you got the attitude, what did I do wrong here? Please show me. You think He's going to answer that prayer? You think He's going to give you the wisdom? Pick yourself up and never make that stupid mistake again. Otherwise, just sit back and never do nothing and see how that works for you. But back to our kings that we've chose today in this country. Do we follow King Trump? Well, if you don't, there's people out there following King Biden. What about Queen Pelosi? King Schumer? Queen AOC. Oh, it's painful to say that one. She's so brilliant, she wants to go to the sun at nighttime because during the day it's too hot. And now, King Mandami. Mandami the Kami. Oh, people are celebrating. Oh, they're all, it's been, I had figured it out this morning, it's been about 20 years, I think, since I've been to New York City. I won't go to California. I got relatives out there, but I just refuse to go there. Well, I think now I'm going to refuse to. I was not planning on going there, but I think that's going to be one of the scratch it off the list places too. I don't ever. What a mess. Do you think that Kami Mandami is going to write a copy of the Torah and read it every single day? This Muslim guy? It's a safe bet that just ain't never going to happen. What about King Schumer? People are suffering. People that really that are hungry, need to eat. And Chuck the Schmuck is leading the charge on shutting everything down. I don't think that he's written a copy of God's law, and he reads it every day either, so that they don't turn aside from any of his commandments to the right or to the left. They know them and they do them, and they're righteous. David was a king. He was a human being, but it said that he was a man after God's own heart. David, I believe, read every single day. He wrote songs to God. We call them the Psalms. Songs about his law and his righteousness and how much he loved them. He was in love with God. If we have a king and we beg for a king, this is the kind of king we're supposed to have. And if we refuse to do this, the king that we're going to get is bad news. Bad news for the king that isn't a godly king, and bad news for us because we've chosen him. All right, let's go back to 1 Samuel chapter 8. I'm going to pick it up in verse 9. Verse 9, it says, "Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall solemnly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them." So he tells Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me, but I want you to tell them what they're really going to get when they do this. Go ahead and give it to them, but warn them that this is going to be the result. Verse 10, "So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. And he said, 'This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen, and some will run before the chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s, These are your government officials. Will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and make some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. Oh, that's exactly what's going on today here. Verse 13, he will take your daughters to be performers, cooks and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. I'm going to come back. I want to talk about this tenth. An evil king, an ungodly king, would take a tenth. We'll get to that. Verse 16. Let's continue on. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry in that day, because your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. So he says, because of all of this oppression, because he's taken everything, and it's all his harvest, his fields, you're going to cry out to me, and I ain't going to hear your prayer. Well, when I read this morning, I thought, oh, crap. Things are about to the point where they could get really bad. And God says when they do, I ain't listening to your prayers, because this is what you wanted. Verse 19. Nevertheless, the people who refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, no, but we will have a king over us, that we may also be like the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. So they said, no, we're going to have a king, and we want him to take care of us, and we want him to fight our battles, and we want him. And God's telling them, if you do this, you're going to be his slaves. He's going to take everything you got. Your children are going to serve him. Your daughters are going to serve him. And you're going to have nothing. Well, that's what kings do to us. Now, I got this next bit of information. King Google is a liar. If we were kids, we'd say, liar, liar, pants on fire. So I asked King Google today, when it says an oppressive king will take 10%, here's the question. What is the average percent taxes that people pay? Sounds really bad. It says for middle income families, the total percentage of income going to all levels of government can range between 33 and 55% for middle income people, the vast majority of people. And as you expect, those that are low income might be paying less, and those that are higher income would be paying more. And that's what most people would conclude. But you know what? It's a lie. And I'm going to show you why I say it's a lie. Even if you're low income, you still have to buy food. You still have to have a place to live. You still have all these expenses. Most people have an electric bill, all of these hidden taxes. They lie to us and tell us it's between 33 and 55%, but King Google is lying and the government wants them to lie. So let me show you a list. There are 97 taxes in the U.S. tax code. I knew there was a lot. At one time, I knew the number, but I had to go up and look at the number. Because it's not a pleasant number. It's not something that I think about. I try not to think about it. And when I think about it the most is when I sit down and work on my taxes. First, I pay Kathy or Emily to go through and make a bunch of entries, and they got multiple hours, maybe 2 hours a month for what you do? 3 hours a month for what you do? That's the fixin' to get ready part. And then I'll spend 50, 60 hours after that. And when they file, I think my last time I filed taxes was 48 or 50 pages. And then I cry when I find out how much they're going to steal from me. But let's look at these taxes that people don't even know about or think about. There's air transportation taxes. People say, well, I don't fly. I don't have any money. I don't fly. Most things that you buy, use, and consume, before I even get into this list, let me explain something that people don't know and comprehend. They think, sock it to the big businesses. I've got a right to this wage. I've got a right to this job. I've got a right. Businesses do not pay taxes. Let me say that again. Businesses do not pay taxes. I paid more tax than General Motors paid last year. Businesses finagle it where they always have a loss. Or if they do have some gain, it's very, very little. But they have to buy things to use in their business and everything. It's called cost of goods. These tariffs, which people get all excited about, and it's temporary, it benefits some people, but it's like going down to the bank and getting a $100,000 loan on your house, line of credit, whatever. Oh, for a while you're going to have all kinds of new money. And then it's going to be gone. You might even make some of the payments out of this new money. But there's a day of reckoning where all of a sudden now you got to make higher payments. Now you got to make whatever your original mortgage was, and then your line of credit loan on top of that. And if you were broke before you did this stupid thing, you're really going to be broke now. So we charge a country a tariff to bring something into this country. I'll give you an example. November 1st, Dell raised their server prices across the board between 8 and 10%. Why? Tariffs. Their costs went up, and that's just November. Their costs went up, the prices went up. Now, that doesn't affect, most people aren't buying servers. But if you work for a company, or you go to the grocery store, or you go to the gas station, or you buy anything, you do anything like that, or even if you are on social insecurity and you receive some kind of government check, they all have to have servers to process all of this. Their cost goes up. Guess what? It's called cost of goods. The price of the product goes up. You say, well, I don't fly. So what? Do you buy things? Say, well, the things I buy, they're not shipped by airplane. No, we'll get to that. But anyhow, let's go back to the list. Air transportation costs, number 1. Number 2, biodiesel fuel taxes. 3, building permit taxes. 4, business registration fees. 5, capital gains taxes. Cigarette taxes, court fines, disposal fees, dog license taxes, driver's license fees, employer health insurance mandate tax. That's people that have a job, that kind of affects you. Employer Medicare taxes. Guess what? Your employer don't pay them. You do. If the employer pays you $10 an hour and pays the government and the insurance companies and everything another $10 an hour, what was that equal? 20? Now you got to produce more than the 20 to make it worth the employer's problem. They got to make some money. So if the real raw cost for you is $20 an hour, they can only pay you 10. Now, what if they didn't have these other costs? Well, they might not be really super generous and say, hey, I'm going to double your pay. But you might be able to negotiate with them and get $17, $18, $19 an hour. When Mary was working for a car dealership, I went to her employer, the controller of the company, and I said, look, the benefits ain't worth it. The insurance doesn't cover anything that's wrong with her and anything we want to do to fix her. You have all of these employee costs, insurance, everything else. I said, let's make a deal. Let's cut all of that out. Cut it all off because we can't use it anyhow. You make money. Let's split what you save. She got like $5 an hour raise. He says, why would you want to do that? I said, I told you, we can't use any of the benefits. So they took her off of the employee benefit plan. They kept $5 an hour. I think it was like $10 an hour, he said. They kept $5 an hour and they were really eager. Hey, that sounds like a good deal to me. That was my first offer, and they took it. I was stupid. I should have said, why don't you keep about 30% of the savings or something? But anyhow, it costs to have employees. And then the employee cost is all in the cost of goods. When you go buy a car from the car dealer, every employee, every expense, the building, the cars and everything, you're paying that price. But anyhow, where did I leave off? What number? 12, okay. Employer Medicare taxes. Your employer don't pay that, you do. And it's a bad deal. Recently somebody told me it's a good deal because you make it back in somewhere around a year. Well, I figured it out. Mary, I signed her up for Social Insecurity finally. Logged in their account and took everything that we had paid the government since the 1970s or whenever she started working. It will take 5.5 years to break even. What the government has stole from her all of these years. And let me tell you, those 1970-something dollars are worth a whole lot more than a dollar today. It's a bad deal. It's a Ponzi scheme. But back to this taxes. It's part of the oppression. God tells us, you want this? Okay, here's what you're going to get. 13, employer social, I'm going to call it insecurity taxes. Next. Oops. Didn't click, and then it goes to 14. Environmental fees, estate taxes, excise taxes on comprehensive health insurance plans, federal corporate taxes, federal income taxes, federal unemployment taxes, fishing license taxes, flush taxes, food and beverage license fees, franchise business taxes, garbage taxes, gasoline taxes, gift taxes, gun ownership permits. Oh, put back on there, sorry, for people streaming. 28, hazardous material disposal fees, highway access fees, hotel taxes, hunting license taxes. Think about how stupid that you have to go and pay a tax to be able to go out and get something to eat. Just for the privilege. First you pay a tax on your gun and your ammo and everything else, and then you pay a tax so that you can go out and try and feed yourself with it. Or go fishing with a fishing pole. Import taxes, individual health insurance mandate taxes, inheritance taxes, insect control hazardous material licenses, inspection fees, insurance premium taxes, interstate user diesel fuel taxes, inventory taxes, IRA early withdrawal taxes, IRS interest charges. 42. IRS penalties. Boy, I can tell you about that one. Library taxes, license plate fees, liquor taxes, local corporate taxes, local income taxes, local school taxes, local unemployment taxes, luxury taxes, marriage license taxes, Medicare taxes, Medicare tax surcharge on high-earning Americans under Obamacare. In other words, you're too successful, you made too much, so we're going to charge you some more taxes for that. Besides one of the planks to the Communist Manifesto, a progressive income tax. 54, Obamacare individual mandate excise tax. Obamacare surtax on investment income. 56, parking meters, passport fees, professional licenses and fees. These are all another form of taxation. Property taxes, real estate taxes, recreational vehicle taxes, registration fees for new businesses, toll booth taxes, sale taxes, self-employment taxes, sewer and water taxes, school taxes, septic permit taxes, service charge taxes. You getting bored yet? Or are you just feeling like you're being taxed to death? People say, well, I don't have a house. I rent. I don't pay property tax. Oh, yes, you do. Part of that rent is going to the landlord because he's paying it for you, but you're still paying it. 70, social security taxes, special assessments for road repairs or construction, sports stadium taxes, state corporate taxes, state income taxes, state park entrance fees, state unemployment taxes, tanning taxes, telephone 911 service taxes, telephone federal excise taxes. You say, well, I don't have a landline anymore. I got a cell phone. It's part of your bill. Take a look at the fine print. Telephone federal universal service fee taxes, telephone minimum usage surcharge taxes, telephone state and local taxes, telephone universal access taxes, the alternative minimum tax, tire recycling fees, tire taxes, tolls, traffic fines, use taxes. Oh, I didn't. Sorry about that. 90, utility taxes, vehicle registration taxes, waste management taxes, water rights fees, watercraft registration and licensing fees, well permit fees, workers' compensation taxes, and zoning permit fees. 97 different types of taxes that and there's probably some more out there that are missed. Now, let me tell you something. God solves all of this with a tax rate that's less than 23%. People say, 23%. That includes everything. You're already paying double minimum of that to your unrighteous king. And that covers everything. His government, all government services, the Levites are supposed to be the policemen, the judges, the civil servants, everything. Services like social insecurity, SNAP, WIC, healthcare, everything. People say, healthcare? Yeah, the priests are supposed to be there doing the healing, not feeding themselves, making themselves fat and happy. Go and look, it's in Isaiah. That's what God commands the priests to do. For federal laws, there's 48,000 laws in the U.S. Code and 300,000 regulations, and that's just a guess. They don't know 100% for sure. You can, if you doubt any of this, it's been 45 years since I stepped foot in the law library, or close to it anyhow. But I've spent a lot of time in Marquette Law Library in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Used to go there at least a couple times a week and study the laws. Now, I know that's kind of weird. Get off into that, but that's what God used to get my attention. Mary hated it when I was doing it, but you can ask her. That's why I'm so much in love with God's laws, because I see and I know first how corrupt man's laws are. You can go down to the UT law school, and they'll let you in. You can go down to their library. Here, let me tell you what you will find. And there's 40 years more books. You will find row after row after row, thousands and thousands of books of law that thick. Just the federal. 48,000 laws, 300,000 regulations. Those all have a cost. Those all raise the cost of our survival and us doing business. So whether you say, well, they don't apply to me or not, you're paying for all of this. Everything you do, everything that you buy. The average state, in addition to this, has an additional 135,000 laws. Now, if you live in a commie state like California, those were like 390-some thousand laws there. But most states have, on top of all of the federal, they got another 135,000. God covers this with 759 statutes, judgments, and commandments. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of oppressive and unnecessarily oppressive, evil laws from man, and God covers it all with 759. So tell me again why we want a king and why we want to violate God's laws by appointing one that's foreign born over us. Because you don't think that that's coming? Just wait. Congress. There are 27 people in Congress that are not Native Americans. And they're the ones that is passing the federal garbage. And we worship them like they were some kind of a god. Oh, mine is a good guy and everybody else is a scumbag. That's what they all think. Unless that good guy did something that affected you and now you don't like him, so now you'll call him a scumbag. But everybody, it's like everybody with their doctor. Oh, I have a good doctor. But the other ones out there, they're really dangerous. Doctors kill more people every year than died in the Vietnam War, the entire war. 759. Oh, that's impossible. Well, I ain't going to go down that trail again. But everybody here got here in a car today. You followed 2,000 traffic laws to get here. If you drove past a cop, you had better been obeying every single one of them, or the blue lights would come on and you'd be at the side of the road collecting another tax from you, or giving you some silver bracelets if you didn't pay your taxes from the taxes that they assessed against you from before. How about, if that's too much to comprehend, how about we start with 2? You think you can do 2? Matthew 22:36, it says, Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Wow. So some people conclude there's only 2 laws we have to obey. Oh, boy. Nope. Sorry to burst your bubble. And they think, see, the Old Testament, it's done away with, nailed to the cross. We're in a new covenant, and these old covenant laws, they don't apply. Jesus changed them all. We only got to do 2. Where did he get these from? Most people can memorize this. If you can memorize these 2, you can memorize 2 more. 2 and 2 is 4. Deuteronomy 6:5 says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength." This old covenant that they hate, that's what Jesus says was the greatest commandment out of all of them. In Leviticus 19:18, "You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Both of these 2 New Testament commandments that people think come from the Torah. It was nothing new. Some people think they don't even got to keep the 10. Forget 603 others. Well, maybe I agree with 8. Maybe I'll keep 8. Maybe I'll keep 9. Maybe I'll keep 4. Let me tell you why you can't keep 2 and stop there. Here's the chart I talked about last week. This shows that these 2 great, and this is what Jesus was summarizing here, the 2 commandments that he quotes out of Deuteronomy and Leviticus are a summary for the 10. The 10 are a summary for the other 603. If you break any of those, you're breaking huge volumes of commandments. There are 8,454 verses in the Bible that tell us to obey God. Now think about that for a minute. 8,454 verses that tell us to obey God. And for those that are going to say, well, yeah, but that's all that Old Testament stuff. In the New Testament, obedience is talked about and we're told to be obedient 1,050 times. All of them. 100% of them are for our good. We sing songs like, "Trust and obey, for there's no one other way." We sing the songs, do we mean them? Ask yourself an honest question. Do you really believe it? Or is it just a song that you sing because somebody put it up on the screen? Or does God really want us to do that? When you say, but, I can't. Try. Why do people reject it without ever even trying it? The vast majority of people that say that they believe in Jesus are not willing to even try what he says to do. Quit being the modern W.C. Fields, looking for loopholes on your deathbed. We can't help it that there are 27 imposters in Congress, that there's a communist running the largest, biggest financial city in this country. We can't change any of that, but what can we do? We can follow our King. Trust and obey, for there's no other way. And when our commie king comes along, pray for some testosterone and say, sorry, but I follow my king. I will not bow my knee to you. Be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Be like Daniel. You realize, and people say, well, you're just looking for trouble. Daniel could have went off into, he had a nice place, okay? He could have went off to a corner in his bedroom or closet. I don't know if they had closets then, but he could. He opened the curtains, got on his knees and prayed. And I don't know if he did this, but I kind of suspect he turned his back to him and it was the equivalent of kiss my butt. He was not, and he loved the king that they had, but he was going to obey the real king, not some man-made appointed king, no matter what the cost, because he loved them. Be like Joseph. When he was tempted, he said he couldn't do this sin against God. How many sins against our King do you compromise? Stop, please. Thank you.
Sorry.